Hey, this is Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with some more adventures in locksmithing. Number 100. This is kind of a milestone. Of course, I've kind of switched. I'm doing more shorts, just kind of doing the daily vlog. But I still got a lot more stories, and I want to do a number of other things with here. Some little tips, things. I'm not that skilled with a camera. I'm getting some equipment, doing some stuff to better do that. But I am trying my hand a little bit at it. But, continue to have these stories. But I have one story that is probably one of my favorite locksmith stories of all. That's something I should do. A top 10 Backyard TARDIS locksmith stories that I like to tell. But anyways, one of my favorite stories out of all of them has to be one. We're not going to say his name, but just the first name here, Jim. And Jim, he was convinced. See, he had a job where he worked for years as an accountant for one of the top 3 rice companies in the United States. And he kind of got a little senile. He got a little not right, and so they had to let him go shortly before he was about to reach full retirement. Now, I didn't know him personally before, so I don't know if his claims of them doing that so he wouldn't get his retirement are true, and he had his break after that, or if it was the other way around. But needless to say, this individual, he has a whole, it's almost like Lost. Like, he's got a setup where he wrote them back a nasty letter telling them that he had helped them, avoid the IRS for years, that he's been cooking their books for them, and he's going to expose them if they try to do anything to him, because, and then he kind of noticed some stuff happening, so he set up a system where he has stuff set to go out to news outlets. If he doesn't put a code into a computer every so many hours, which, eventually someday he's gonna die, and these news articles, whether anybody will listen to them, will go out. But that's his thing, is he has to, every so many hours, he has to go to a computer and type in a password into this software to prevent it from happening. Now, he's of the mind that this company has hired ex-Black Op individuals to make him look crazy and drive him crazy, so that all his word would be discredited, because he will now be documented as having a mental illness. And he would give us examples of how, he'd wake up in the morning and he'd go to brush his teeth, and his pistol would be in his toothbrush holder. And then he would go to put it away in the gun safe, and his toothbrush would be in the gun holder in the gun safe. Yeah, if that doesn't make you feel uneasy, I don't know what will. But this individual, when he leaves his house, he locks the door, he does all these things, and he then climbs out a window, and then he has a hair that he puts over the window. He takes a long hair and he puts it there to help him know if somebody went through the window. He basically stills up his house every time he leaves, and he did research. And he went online and he's like, I either want this or this. He either wanted Schleich Primus, or he wanted some Medico locks. And I'm like, well, yeah, Primus we can do, but it's a bit expensive. Now, we came out there in, board and installed. He didn't have Deadbolt. We put the Deadbolts on, but we put them all Primus, switched his house. Now, we got a call. I wasn't the initial one that went out, but we did get a call a few months later from the landlord, when the landlord realized his keys wouldn't work the apartment anymore. We didn't know he was renting, because it was kind of like a little standalone studio apartment. And So we went down a couple of times, and he would be every now and then he would say they're still getting in. You need this, and he would say, well, what about this? I was like, look, they can get in Primus. They're gonna get. There's nothing we can put on it. You're putting on more security than because the armor plating on the door, all this stuff. I'm like, the hospital doesn't keep their narcotics locked up this tight as you have your apartment. But I remember one time we came down, and he had a young couple um, who were helping him. They were moving some furniture for him. He was talking about how the gentleman cuts his yard, how the lady is cleaning his house, and she was he had met them locally at the church last weekend, and he mentioned that they were illegal immigrants, but that they were the nicest people in that, and he had me make them copies of the key. Now, the key that he got was the kind of key that requires a special ID card that's issued with the key to make more copies. This is high security. This is meant for high security individuals. It's pick proof, bump proof, whatever you want to call it. This is supposed to be the end all be all of security, and he has it on his house. It's just ridiculous. But he had only known them for a week. They'd been doing his yard. He mentions they've come into the country illegally, and he says, you know what? They're good, honest people. They can't be bought. However, one of the reasons why we got this individual is because the locksmith out in the city where he lives, because it was out in Colusa, which is a little bit out of our range. We do cover that area, but there's a locksmith there locally. We've got a non-compete. We've bumped up our trip charge because it takes us about an hour to drive there from our central spot. And now where I've moved the business now, it's about an hour and 40 minutes. But because I've moved the central spot of the business. But it was just one of those things where it was like, okay, you got one local guy out there, make sure he gets all first dibs, and then only customers he doesn't want to work with, or that he's not there at time, pay extra, but we're not stealing his business. Well, he had his own type of restricted key that was not as advanced as Prime, but it was a restricted key. And he just got tired of dealing with the guy, and the guy would want him to meet him in like alleyways to make key copies and all this kind of stuff. And so he finally told him, you know what, I'm done. And I can do this for you, I can do this for you, but like here is my conditions for servitude. And so when he called us up, he told us, you know what, Sutter Rice Co, they got to him, big business, he let greed, and he would go on and on and on how this other locksmith was taking paychecks and giving out his key to help them and all this and disrespecting the craft. So, this guy's kind of a loon in this way, and he's just going on, but here he's discrediting this other locksmith's name, his good name, but people he met last week that he admits came into the country illegally, not the person who's federally licensed, they're honest to a fault and can't be bought, and he gives these high security keys to. Yeah, it's just, but he would talk about the things they move around and they do and this, and he's like, oh yeah, they're getting like these ex-Black Ops guys from Vietnam and stuff. Like, he just go on and on. Fast forward years later, he is in Ubis. He's moved now, and he's in a mental health facility. But he calls us up and says, I'm in this new facility. They do have cameras and stuff, but they can manipulate that. I want you to put the Primus locks on there. I pull up, and I see he's at a mental health facility. I'm like, call him back up. I'm sorry, the place that you're at will not allow me to put these locks on your door. They have to be able to have access into your room. So, he's always been an interesting character. And definitely one of the most lively. He will talk your ear off with stories and tales of all this stuff. for years, and there's a number of us at the shop that have had to deal with him. Uh, my buddy Mark, he done a lot. I originally was saving the story because I wanted Mark to come on with me, and I still may have him tell his side of the story of dealing with this individual, but just because he's so interesting. But this is one of the now I've obviously you've heard in these stories. I've had much more ridiculous stories. I've had much more ridiculous druggies and different things, but this gentleman was just. And in general, the fact that he had a computer, he would go and he would do that. Like, it was just a fascinating, the world that he lives in, like the idea of being in his mind. And, schizophrenia is really something that is a difficult illness to treat, because most people with schizophrenia are paranoid of the medication. And so even when they're doing good, and they're taking the medication, something can trigger that paranoia and they stop taking it. And then they go way off the deep end and are just surrounded by this paranoia. Of course, they also talked about the one where he ended up being right, so that certain people were actually after him, and when he wound up dead. You have to take it ground and salt. But that rice company is my customer too, and I made sure to never let him know that, because I knew that would probably be the end of it. He would be singing how we got bought out too. But you do what you can. But this is one of those customers that at a certain point, like, he would look up stuff that we would have to go out and license, because we don't even have like that high end of military grade, and he would want that. And I go, you do not need a $1,200 lock on your front like wooden door of your apartment. That's ridiculous. We already put a $300 lock there. Like, that's way more than you need. You don't need to go more crazy than that. So it's just interesting. You meet interesting people whenever you service people in their homes, have a public number. You meet interesting people, and people like this is one of the reasons why I started this vlog, because I tell these stories and everyone goes, oh, you should write a book, you should write a book. I'm never going to have time to write a book. I'm never going to be able to go through the publishing. But YouTube I could post little videos on YouTube and talk about it. So if you've been watching these and enjoying them, thank you so much for that. Here's to 100 more. I think when I get to 150, maybe I'll do my top 10 stories, locksmith stories that I tell. Revisit some of these. All right, with that, I hope everybody's having a good day, and I'll catch you in the next video.